A lot of smart people end up with a shitty life, and a lot of dumb people end up with a pretty good life. And the answer is in the difference between smart and wise. Being wise has basically nothing to do with how smart you were when you were born, and a lot more to do with how you approach life. But if you're happy being smart and you don't really care about creating a better life and career for yourself, then feel free to click off, because that's pretty much what this is about. But if you're someone who's smart and you know that there's more to you, but you can't quite get there and you don't know why, then stick around, because once you're smart and wise, there's basically no limit to what you can do. And it's a really small change to make. It's really easy change to make, but it's just as easy to miss. There were two students who lived on a mountain with their master, and they were training to become wise sages. Every day they would study philosophy and practice its teachings. They both had strong work ethics, and they were eager to learn and disciplined enough to achieve their goal. But it was clear to him that the older of the two boys was far smarter. Things came easy to him. He absorbed information from books like a sponge and could put new knowledge into practice almost immediately. He was a human calculator. He could spot any pattern and solve any problem. But the younger student wasn't so gifted. He was forced to read things 3 or 4 times before they finally sunk in, and took a little longer to identify patterns and solve problems. Each day, the master would have his students hike through the woods to the spring and fetch a barrel of water. Before they left, he would always say, "The wise proceeds with caution." But the older student was confident. He knew the path like the back of his hand. He'd studied all the information his master had given him and didn't feel the need to be cautious. And even though the younger student was also familiar with the track, he always had his master's warning in the back of his mind. So, he'd carry a bow and arrow, and he'd throw rocks to bait any predators that might be lurking around. Years passed, and the boys never encountered anything. The rock baits were never necessary, and the bow had yet to be drawn. And as such, the older student grew tired of caution and picked up the pace. But the younger student continued to throw his rocks as he always did, even though his companion laughed at him for it. One day, after he threw his rocks, as he always does, he noticed a rustle in the bushes. He drew his bow, just in case, and waited. In the blink of an eye, a mountain dog launched from the bushes and sprinted for his friend. He took a breath, aimed his bow, and released the arrow, catching the dog halfway through the air. I had the idea for this story when I was riding my bike home the other day, and I take the same road home every single day, and there's this one part where I intersect with another street, but I can't actually see into the street because there's a big hedge there. So every day I slow down and check if there are any cars coming. And most days there are no cars and I keep going. But the other day, this Range Rover flew out the corner, going way too fast. And there's a little daycare in there, so I sort of shook my head, and then I thought, he must have had at least some sort of intelligence to be able to save up the money and get himself a Range Rover, or at least I gave him the benefit of the doubt that he was a smart guy. But if I hadn't checked and he hadn't gone slowly, he would have wiped me out, and that wouldn't have been very smart of him. So this kind of created this idea, or sort of reinforced this idea in my head, that wisdom starts with caution. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. So even though the older kid was smarter and he was able to solve problems quicker, it was the younger kid who ended up being the wiser of the two. This is very interesting to me because I always thought that wise was at the other end of the smart scale from dumb, and it was just further along than smart. So someone who's wise was just an extremely smart person. But the more I think about it, the less accurate that seems. Because smart can mean a lot of things, really, and that don't necessarily have anything to do with wisdom. Your IQ is irrelevant if you lack caution. And I see it more like this graph now. So at the low end of logic, if you have low caution, you're just a foolish person. But if you're at the low end of logic and you have high caution, you're an anxious person. If you're at the high end of logic and you have low caution, like the driver or the older student, you're smart, but you're rash and you're risking a lot. But if you're at the high end of logic and the high end of caution, you're wise. If you have low logic, study the world. If you're rationally cautious, study your mind. If you are smart but rash and make irrational decisions, then slow down and think your decisions through before making them. There's a Sufi proverb that goes, "Trust in Allah, but tie your camel." So some of my favorite movies are those mob gangster movies from the 80s and 90s, where they talk about the Italian mobs in New York and Las Vegas. And there are these repeating characters that I see in all the movies that I watch. And there is a reason that they have this sort of emotional impact on the viewer that they do. To simplify things a little bit, there are pawns who they sort of are the soldiers. They get the dirty work done. But the funny thing is, nobody really cares about the pawns. The police aren't, the FBI aren't interested in them, and they don't make any decisions. They have a low ceiling, they have low logic, they're sort of just there because they don't know what else to do with their lives. These guys are low intelligence, low cautious characters. But something to remember is that these guys don't get blamed for the crime. It's the kings and the queens in the chess game that do. So the bosses and the dons are the real masterminds of the operation, because they're characters who make high pressure, high stakes decisions. Now, the reason that they're so interesting to me is because your heart hurts for them, because you know that they're smart, and the movies always portray the fact that they're softer than they make out to be, but they got themselves into the wrong line of work. So these guys are extremely high intelligence. They're running complex businesses, and there are constantly complicated strategies that they're running to launder money and abuse the system. But they're running such high risk games that things always end up coming to bite them in the ass. And I would call these guys clever and smart and intelligent, but I wouldn't use the word wise to describe them. Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I'm changing myself. So I wanted to go through 3 steps to cultivate this wisdom through the trait of caution. So the first thing is to slow down. I think of people who speed in their car, especially through children's school zones. Where are you trying to get? It doesn't matter if you have a Nobel Prize under your belt or a 200 IQ. If you're speeding in a school zone, in my eyes, you're an idiot. The opposite of wise. So in your car and just in life in general, just slow down a little bit and let your intelligence do the work instead of acting on impulse. The second thing is to consistently use your imagination to see ahead. So your imagination isn't just for drawing and painting, it's used to imagine a future scenario. So just like someone imagines a few moves ahead in a chess game, or like we were talking earlier about how I imagine someone coming through that street in a car, you need to foresee potential hazard and act with that risk in mind. Gambling might be fun, but there's a risk associated with it. So a wise man might put a few dollars down here and there, but he's never going to throw his life away because he can't foresee the issue. Number 3 is don't rely on anyone else or something else if it leaves you at risk. So what I mean by this is, like when you're driving a car at a roundabout and someone indicates off, don't trust that indicator, because if you go and they falsely indicated and they T-bone you and you die, it might have been their fault, but you're dead. So you need to have this thinking all throughout life. Anything that counts on someone else or something else to help you out shouldn't be counted on at all. You need to be sort of self-sufficient in that way and use that caution, like, I'm not going to put myself in a situation that allows someone else to stitch me up. So hopefully those were like good actionable ways for you to apply this, because in my eyes, being wise is actually just assessing risk and taking precaution throughout your life. And that's not to say walk on eggshells, because a wise man doesn't walk on eggshells, but he does take precaution in every decision that he makes. So I hope you enjoyed that. This is something that's been really front of mind for me recently. It's maybe a little less philosophical than my other writing and my other videos, but I really valued this idea, and just as I've been walking around in my day-to-day life, I've been taking way more caution since writing about this. And I feel wiser, because it's really easy to be reckless in life, and it's really easy to go out and buy things and not make a financial budget. But when you do that, you're sort of just throwing away all your intelligence. It doesn't matter how smart you are. You're just going to end up being dumb. You'll make dumb decisions. So yeah, well, this is good news though, because this means that you can cultivate wisdom and you don't have to rely on being born a certain way. And if you were born intelligent, then you can sort of take that to the next level. So yeah, thanks for watching.